Ary Rosenbaum here with another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. This week's topic, we're going to talk about why 401k plan providers have to focus on participant outcomes, kind of change the pace of 401k marketing and move away from what has been going on for the last 15 years and concentrating on something that I think is very important and very new that we're really starting to focus on. But of course, first things first, sign up for that 401k National Virtual Conference, January 30th to 31st, 2026. I believe those are the dates. And we finally booked the dates for Chicago and Denver. I just want to pull up the calendar and tell you the dates so you could put that into your calendar. What I have is April 17th for Chicago. We'll try that. That's going to be on a Thursday. And we'll see how that works. Chicago can be a little tricky in April. Then on May, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's going to be April 16th. That's April 16th. I'm looking at 2025. 2026, April 16th. That's on a Thursday. And then we're going to go with May 5th on a Tuesday in Denver, Colorado. Thanks to the Mets schedule and thanks to stadium policies, we are going to try some non-Friday dates. Traditionally, we use the Friday date. It just works out for me for travel. But this year, I think we're going to try based on the schedule and to see if having a non-Friday day will help with attendance. We'll see how that happens. As far as Philadelphia, I do not think it will work out this year. I think last week I said you can't run opposition to the World Cup. They're not going to allow us to have the event on the World Cup, and they're also a stadium that doesn't have the game and the event the same day. I understand that, and I think there was a date in July, and I don't think I want to do a July date. I've never run an event in the summer. People go away. That's just the nature. It's kind of a dead spot in the business. So we're probably going to flip that and focus on going to Washington, D.C. for September. We'll see how that works out. I can look at the calendar and see if there are more cities that maybe we would be interested in. But like I said, hopefully you could sign up. I announced the dates, I think, in an email last week, so we should have the logos pretty soon and have the sign-up pages as well. So let's get to the topic at hand. I've always been a big fan of Star Trek VI. There's always this thing with Star Trek movies. The even movies were always better than the odd movies, odd number movies. Except I will say that Star Trek 3, Search for Spock, is one of my favorites. Blowing up the Enterprise, and Christopher Lloyd as a Klingon. But Star Trek 6 was the last for the first crew. I mean, Shatner came back for the Generations one, but Nimoy did not. And DeForest Kelley did not, but Undiscovered Country has so many, nuances. I believe that's a line I want to say it's from Hamlet. The future is the undiscovered country. I believe it's Hamlet. I know it's Shakespeare, but in the film, it was used as a metaphor for the, uncertain peace between the Klingon and the Federation. It's kind of uncharted territory, and that could be very, very scary. When I think of, retirement plans, retirement for plan participants is the undiscovered country. It's not death, but it's this transition into another phase of life. I see people retiring here and there. That's not something I'm really been interested. I don't think I'll ever retire. I think I'll always want to do something. Maybe I'll change my mind when I'm 70 something, but I need something to keep my mind active. I think that if you don't, the brain is kind of like a muscle. If you don't have it work, it's going to suffer and contract, and that's where you get dementia from. That's how I see it. But we'll see what happens. Um, I think that we need to refocus as a plan provider on what's new and out there. And, participant outcomes is something that I think the industry up until recently did not focus on. And I understand that. Compliance, isn't really isn't the destination. I think too many people concentrate that as being the most important thing. My practice is built on plans getting into compliance. I just got an email now from a bundle provider, referring my work because, they don't want to do something because they're not interested in the liability that can go with it. But, compliance when it comes to retirement plans is the price of admission. You want to play by the rules of the Internal Revenue Code and have tax deferral of retirement savings, tax deduction of employer contributions. You got to play by the rules. And it's a really important thing, but that's not the destination. The destination is participants having the ultimate opportunity to have enough money for retirement, and outcomes do matter. When a participant can't retire, everybody loses. The participant obviously loses. They have financial insecurity, delayed retirements, and the crushing realization that the dream they worked toward for decades is slipping away. And employers, older employees who can't afford to retire often stay longer than they want to or should. And that's, might create workforce gridlock, obviously higher healthcare costs with older people. Older people get, more ill than younger people. And it could create sold opportunities for younger workers who want to grow and get promoted and all that. For plan providers, if we continue to ignore outcomes, we are setting ourselves up for, irrelevance. The next generation fiduciary litigation isn't going to be about fees. I think we've covered the base on fees. It will be about whether plan sponsors and providers did enough to help participants retire successfully. Retirement outcomes, the Kobayashi Maru, which we understand from Star Trek II that Shatner cheated in order to successfully complete that mission. We can't ignore the no-win situation where participants face if they leave and are not prepared for retirement. So, what do outcomes look like? We're looking at sufficient replacement income. People need to stock away to replace at least 70% to 80% of their pre-retirement income. They need to have adequate savings. Need to have a savings rate, 10 to 15% when you include employer contributions. And we can press upon that through auto enrollments and auto escalation. Those are great features. We need diverse age-appropriate investment options. We need, well-designed QDIAs like target date funds or managed accounts that evolve with participants based on their age. I think it scared me to realize that, they're like 2060 target. I don't even know what 2050 retirement dates. It's something really crazy. These target date funds that are propping up. And it's like, I'm going to be old when that's showing up. But I think it's also important, last but not least, that participants get an access to guidance, understanding financial wellness. There should be advice tools and retirement income projections. I remember the old days when there was really a lack of investment advice. And I'm glad that, over the last 15, 20 years that we've got over the hump where fiduciaries could offer investment advice. The undiscovered country of retirement income, the accumulation phase is really familiar territory, as we know. But the decumulation phase where you turn that pile of money into a reliable paycheck in retirement, is really that undiscovered country for the retirement plan business. There's this, move again back to annuities. Um, you know, uh, Maybe we should focus on managed payout funds. And we really need to make sure um, that there is opportunity and options for plan participants. When what's the glide path? What are they going to do with the money? Is this money going to last? And think of opportunities out there to push participants out to a situation where they could can rely on payments. We may go past the choice of just telling participants roll the money out and we don't want to know from you anymore. Um, and I think it's important that we have to shift the plan provider mindset. I think advisors really need to stop pushing 401k plans as some sort of product, and put themselves in a position where they become retirement outcome strategists. Focusing on plan design, financial wellness programs, and more importantly, participant engagement. It's really essential to connect. And then, there can be opportunity for the advisor in the accumulation phase for these plan participants as they retire and take the money out. TPAs, in my opinion, can't just crunch numbers and spit things out. They have to really push for, plan features, like safe harbor plan design, auto enrollment, and Roth contributions. And, they're not going to have a choice now with the HC change in 2026. Record keepers really also need to go beyond portals and statements. They need, participant-facing tools that actually change behavior and just don't look beautiful as a website that a lot of plan providers do. I think unfortunately focus too much on. Fund managers also need to remember that expense ratios are only one piece. Glide path construction, risk-adjusted returns, and retirement income strategies are where the rubber meets the road, which is actually a really good song by Meatloaf on one of his later albums. The Klingons in the undiscovered country were forced to rethink everything when Praxis exploded at the beginning of the movie. Providers need to learn the same lesson here. Business as usual isn't going to cut it anymore. I think if we look at it, I'm going to sound the whistle. When I started my practice in 2010, I always tell you the story. James Holland and I were two people on LinkedIn talking about the problems of expenses, and there was this guy out there who wasn't even in the business. I think he was like a guy who placed, brokers and brokerage houses or whatnot, and he said that we were selling fear. There's not going to be any litigation, blah, 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 blah. And we know that, James and I were right. It never went down market. We never thought that it would go down market. But it was enough to change this business that, it led to, fee disclosure. And, it changed. Revenue sharing has been phased out. And now, litigation, we're rethinking what we're going to do with forfeitures. And I really think there will be a litigation over retirement plan outcomes. I think somebody's going to say, "Oh, look at this plan," and they're always going to go after the bigger plans. Jerry Schlichter ain't going to come after a $2 million 401k plan. There's no money to be had for him. He wants, I forgot which plan it was recently where he's getting that $17 million. He wants a $17 million pay date. He's going to go after big fish, not after guppies. And I think there will be litigation one day over outcomes. It's going to happen. Every initiative from fee disclosure to cybersecurity guidance, really points to greater accountability for plan sponsors. So I won't be shocked if one day we will see outcome-based fiduciary standards, and that's going to be a problem for a lot of plan providers who just didn't keep an eye on the ball and just ignored it. So I think that providers need to educate participants on the cost of delayed retirement, It's important to demonstrate the value of design features. It's also important to highlight risk mitigation. Um, and a plan sponsor who can show that they took participant outcomes seriously are going to be in a stronger defensive position if litigation ever comes down the pike, which I think is inevitable. Sponsors need to do right by their employees, but they need plan providers that get it, that can actually help them along the way. At the end of Undiscovered Country, Kirk tells the crew it's time for others to go on their own voyages while the Enterprise will ride off into retirement. And that's what a good outcome should feel like. Not the fear of the unknown, um, not panic over insufficient funds, but a dignified exit after a long journey. Our job as plan providers to make that possible, to ensure that when participants reach retirement, they are not staying into the abyss. Um, you know, and if we only focus in this business on compliance, we are totally missing the point of why we're here. And we can't only focus on fees as well. We miss the point there as well if that's all we do. Retirement outcomes are the undiscovered country of our industry, the place where we can either secure our relevance or fade into irrelevance. Uh, you know, like like Kirk and the Klingons, we have a choice. Do we cling to the old ways, obsessing over, the fun lineups and basis points, or are we going to touch the future, which, it is uncertain, it is scary, but we can guide participants towards successful retirements. The undiscovered country isn't something to fear. It's something to prepare for, to plan for, and to boldly go where no man or woman has gone before, but also to enter with tools and strategies that only committed plan providers can deliver. That's the way I see it. And, uh, you know, this is one of those changes in the business that, again, some providers will get, and other providers will be so damn arrogant they'll never get it. And those that, are ahead of the curve and focus on participant outcomes are going to do better than those who ignore it. That's just the nature of the business. It goes back to when I was working with this paralegal who taught me everything I knew, March Tracy, and she said, Ary, um, quite a few plan providers, Tax Reform Act of 1986 came around. They went out of business because, Tax Reform Act of 86, they didn't get ready for the changes, and they just completely went out. And we saw that with fee disclosure. Not a lot of plan providers went out of business, but you will notice the plan providers that exited the business by selling the bulk of their plans. That's how, the Empowers of the world got bigger, because they were buying plan providers who could no longer deal with a fee disclosure environment that was going to be very, very competitive with fees. Empower could. And we know those names of the plan providers out there that just said, you know what, this is it for us. And I think that, again, being a plan provider, focusing on retirement outcomes is a bold strategy. It is the undiscovered country, but I think that if I've always, and again, Full Circle, available on Amazon.com, and again, finishing up the next book, that 401k Plan Provider Handbook, or whatever we're going to call it. I've always stated that you always have to look at what the competitors are doing and do things differently. And I think a lot of plan providers are not focusing on retirement outcomes. So my 2 cents, is that if you want to get ahead in this business, that's something that you should consider. So, and again, Full Circle, available on Amazon for Kindle, paperback. Just got paid my last monthly royalty check. Direct deposit. I think it was enough to buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks. I might have maybe have $1 or so back. But next book will probably come out in January, right before the National Virtual Conference. I'll probably use that as my piece presentation. So
that's it. I hope you enjoyed that 401k, this episode of that 401k podcast. Go to that 401ksite.com. I gave the dates, save the date for the live in-person events. January 30th, 31st is the National Virtual Conference. Please sign up. It's free. And again, if you miss any part of it, it will be available on YouTube. So please, I hope you can tune in next week for another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Take care. Bye.